All right, this is Marfa, Texas. Got another story going on here with Chris Lewis, the rock star stone man, as he goes by on his Instagram. He's a sculptor and traveler, and he's going to show me some of his work here at this pop-up in Marfa, Texas.
Now, at this point in life, there's nothing I'd rather do than make art. It's been my passion since I was a kid, and nothing feels more correct. Like when I was younger and the tough guy I used to be, I couldn't utter the word God. It really was like I'd stutter. And then in recovery, I learned the acronym of good orderly direction. And
Yeah.
so I preach that to people all the time. It's like, get over it. It's so obvious to me. So I picked up these 4 chunks of black marble from Cochise, Arizona, actually Wilcox. It's called Cochise marble. And I suspect that name came from the fact there's actually gold in, little flecks of gold in this stuff.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, there's a legend around Cochise and the Apache Wars where they actually took a bunch of gold from the soldiers and stashed it away in the mountains. And treasure hunters are still searching for it now.
I see maybe there's some specks in this piece over here.
Yeah, this one has a lot more, and as well the big one here, you can see it all, a little glitter, and in the sunshine, it really pops.
Yeah.
But what I do is simply accentuate the high and low spots in the marble. Wherever there's extra material that I'd rather not waste, I do the bubbles. My main focus, for the most part, in my past work especially, was to create my depictions of ocean waves with clusters of thorns or canine teeth, whatever you want to call them. So I still cling to that whenever the piece allows it. And years ago, when I was suffering from chronic illness, I had brain fog and fatigue and everything else. I couldn't even function with the physicality of the work. And I was spending my winters in California to get away from the cold weather in New York, and searching the beach for workable stone that the hardest stone polishes the best, and it holds the polish. And I've always appreciated round rocks, so I started collecting them, and there was always a damaged side, and I'd carve a facet into that to break the line of sight to create the illusion that it was a perfect bubble shape, whether it's an egg or a cell or a raindrop. I mean, it's just nature's way for things to be round, and it feels right.
Like the globe, huh?
Exactly.
Like the earth.
I mean, everything. You break it down, and everything is around.
You ever see when a raindrop hits water in slow motion and it pops up?
Oh yeah.
And there's that little.
Yeah.
That little.
And it's
perfect
so
circle, huh?
inspiring. It's really, really what I've always had a thing for water. Actually, I was raised in a horticultural nursery, so I was spoon-fed landscape design my whole life, and I went into the world of landscape design in my teens. And it wasn't until I moved to San Francisco in the early 90s doing really high-end landscapes that I realized I could make a living as a sculptor. And
So you took your landscape knowledge and transitioned it into stonework.
yeah, because it's all about creating the environments for the sculptures anyway, as far as the outdoor stuff and the whole. It's a catchphrase, garden rooms, and with a sculpture or not, it's a beautiful thing to have separate areas for different functions in a landscape. And what better way to really set it off than to put a piece of good art in it. So these pieces all really decide what they're going to be shape-wise, and this pebble project is what I've come to call it. These that really don't depict ocean waves so much as only the way water does its thing whether it's the choppiness on the surface or the foam that develops from the agitation of the water, which is what the bubbles
Oh yeah, I can totally see a smooth wave wall with the foam bubbles on top right here. That's really neat.
And, having been a surfer,
Yeah.
It just, yeah, I know what a good wave looks like. So yeah, it's actually, it really is, thank God, a labor of love, and the whole thing has been 30 years in the development. And
You were telling me that a piece like this is actually just a miniature model of more large-scale pieces that you do, right?
Yeah, I mean, the bigger the better. I received a book for a gift a long time ago called A Monumental Vision, and it was about Henry Moore and his work. And yeah, he was a huge inspiration for me, as well as other sculptors like Brancusi. It just comes naturally at this point. I have tremendous intuition, and that's part of it, is seeing what the stone wants to be and feeling it. And I just turn off my frontal lobe and let the intuition drive the chisels and make the shapes. And
So a regular piece for you, let's say maybe one of the smaller pieces and then one of the bigger pieces in size. I mean, what amount of time are you spending on a smaller piece versus a big piece like that?
well, people always ask, how long did this piece take? And I
yeah.
say 40 years. Yeah, it's kind of like keep it a secret how fast I can do them. But essentially, there's a week or two in each one. And it's only because I've been doing this for 40 years and I know exactly where I'm going and what I'm doing with the piece, and there's not much waffling anymore as there was years ago. I learned early that Michelangelo, I studied in Italy in 1996. I went over to Pietrasanta, Italy, after my boss, when I was in the Bricklayers Union, I was running crews for this big commercial company, restoring all the big buildings in San Francisco. We were working on an eagle on the front of the San Jose library. He had to run to a meeting, and I picked up his tools and finished the eagle. And he got back. I was worried he'd be pissed, but he's like, holy shit, you got a knack for this. If you ever get a chance, you got to go to Italy, his town where Michelangelo worked, and life there revolves around stone carving. And yeah, I did. And it was the most fantastic experience. And while there, I learned that the rumor has it that Michelangelo was able to go with a block of stone and just push the surface back and say he was carving the hand, and the hand would just emerge, and it was done. Where most people, they start out making it look like a snowman, the whole hand is just a mitten.
Like an outline
and then
first.
They start whittling away a little bit. Yeah, they get the silhouette down, but he was able to just, he had this vision, and he could just go right to where he wanted to. So I aspired to do the same thing, and
So
that is how it goes now.
This series here is, there's some similarities between a lot of these pieces.
Yeah.
But do you do other series where they might look completely different from this?
Yeah, to me, continuity is everything. Whether you're doing a landscape design or a home architecturally, a painting and everything else, the whole thing is to have a common theme. So with these, especially with these four, I wanted them all to be a little bit different for the variety, but they also have a strong commonality. These two pieces I brought with me as an insurance policy in case something happened that I wasn't able to create, as shit happens. And I've had my share of accidents, or
Well, you told me also that you were a cancer survivor. Would you want to share some about that?
Yeah, it's I'll say that I had been suffering from chronic illness since about the age of 28, which was half my life ago, and it was a mystery as to what was causing it. I had the gamut of autoimmune diseases, and the inflammation from it all led to cancer, and I decided to say no to the chemo and radiation, and with the help of lots of great books, one of which being The Medical Medium, and there's a doctor named African doctor, Sebi, and I just sought the knowledge and did the work, and oh my God, it was a long, hard journey, But as of now, I've gained 20 pounds in the past year, and I think I'm gonna make it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Cancer-free almost, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I still suffer from a little bit of it and the aches and pains, but for the most part, life is joyous. I haven't felt this good in my entire life.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a lot.
And you're able to work through all that too.
Yeah, it was childhood trauma that really caused it all, and spraying herbicides and pesticides as a kid. You know, as soon as I was big enough to carry a backpack sprayer, I was spraying Roundup, wearing nothing but my bathing suit and walking through it, and
barefoot in a field with all that.
And the stuff, what it does is it debilitates your liver from being able to identify the toxins. So all the toxic stuff otherwise that I'd been exposed to as an artistic kid piled up, and by the time I was 28, I had problems. So it's been a hell of a thing, and not to sound overly religious, but God, you know, the saying, God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. And the illness did change me. It made me a better man. I really had, honestly, after I had a massive head injury at 5 years old, I think I came out of the hospital with a bad attitude and a mischievous nature at the very least, and I'm not proud of who I was through a lot of the childhood and through my 20s, but I finally found a devout faith in God about 15 years ago, and life has been slowly getting better and better with it. It's like, it's beyond words, really.
Yeah, so those difficulties over time slowly made you a bit more humble and faithful and resilient.
It was God's little way of making me check myself.
Yeah.
A little flick that I needed to take me off my brutal path of the mentality I had been force-fed, and this whole thing of the systems and institutions and all of it is, it's in grave need of changing.
What is life like now as a sculptor, and you do a bit of traveling as well, right?
Yeah, I have studios all over the world, and I really, with that whole new faith in God and a change in my paradigm of not caring whether I become a millionaire anymore or not, I realized that life is all about relationships and living in service. So I'm welcomed everywhere I go, and really the only hard part is packing up and leaving and moving on to the next project that I line up. And I lived in New York for 20 years. I moved there in my late 20s, just as actors moved to Hollywood. I moved to Manhattan, and I grew up just 80 miles north in a majestic valley called the Shangam Valley, where rock climbers flock there from all over the world to hike and climb, and it has the close proximity to New York City. So between that and the fact that there was a great state university called New Paltz in the town of New Paltz, and it's been known as a really good art school since the 60s. So there's a lot of culture in that area, and thank God, because without that influence, I would not be who I am today either. It all makes us, everything we're exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a little kid, I was running around in Peter Max's studio. He had a 2-car garage on the side of the mountain, just a walking distance from our family's farm. And I found him fascinating. And
one of your early influences, obviously, right?
Yeah, without even realizing it. And yeah, it was a great thing. I'm very thankful for all the exposure, good and bad.
How'd you come up with your name, the Rockstar Stone Man? I really like that a lot. I told you that when I met you outside the bakery there.
Yeah, it's a catchy name, and I have had a deep love of music my entire life, even though aside from my voice, I've had no musical abilities. And because of my stage fright and PTSD from the childhood stuff, I just couldn't do it. I did have a burgeoning band when I was in high school. I was the singer. But
you got some frontman energy. I can see that.
Yeah. Maybe someday.
Maybe it's the hat, you know.
Yeah, this is just a matter of keeping the sun off my head as I'm getting older. And
hats are essential here in Texas, man.
I always say if I hadn't been born an artist, I'd be an archaeologist. And,
makes sense to
I
me.
told my wife that. We've only been married 4 years, and when we met, I told her that, and she said, "I have a hat for you." And she ran to the closet and came out with this. It's an official Indiana Jones hat, straight off the set. And I love it.
Oh, Harrison Ford, the sculptor.
Exactly. Yeah, so I saw you looking at this piece. This is jasper. It's incredibly heavy, super dense, really hard to polish, but the shine is worth it, and it's like significantly heavier than most stone.
Than the black marble here.
Yeah.
Much more dense.
Yeah, you wouldn't think there'd be a big difference, but even from the difference between most marble and most granite is a 40 pound per cubic foot difference, and the difference from granite to steel is twice the weight. It's really incredible once you really get familiar with what things weigh. And sometimes I pick up stones that I swear have a significant content of steel or some sort of metal in them because they're that heavy. And again, the density of this is significantly more than granite. But I got it. It was one of those that I found in my healing process, walking the beaches in Southern California, and I've never found a piece of jasper this big.
Wow,
quite a gift.
It was calling its name out to you, huh?
Yeah, I spotted it from a couple 100 feet away, and I said, nah, it can't be.
What do you think about when moments like that happen and you find the perfect rock on your path? You just happen to be going for a walk, walking the dog, you know?
Yeah, it really is a huge part of my process, and it's not like you can just go out and spend 5 minutes looking and find the right stone. There's a lot of time involved, and find the bliss, just like Joseph Campbell said, and everything is so much easier.
That's the faith, right?
Yeah, I think about all the time I spent sitting on a surfboard, not getting paid a dime. I was having the time of my life, and the same with hiking and snowboarding and all of that. And now, at this point in life, there's nothing I'd rather do than make art. It's been my passion since I was a kid, and nothing feels more correct.
Well, and it sounds like not only is it a life-giving creative endeavor, but it's also a healing process for you too.
Absolutely.
Like physically.
Yeah, and there's no feeling of being closer to God than being a creator as well. So forgive the constant references, and some people get really uncomfortable with it.
Oh no, please.
Even myself, I was like, when I was younger and the tough guy I used to be, I couldn't utter the word God. It really was like I'd stutter. And then in recovery, I learned the acronym of good orderly direction. And
yeah.
so I preach that to people all the time. It's like, get over it. It's so obvious to me. I mean, and it comes in the ability to recognize beauty, and then you start connecting the dots, and just to look in someone's eyes and recognize their beauty, and whether it's in the eyes or the facial thing or in their heart, it's everywhere, and it's a wonderful thing. It really is. I will say that I was really living for the thrill of things when I was younger. I was a definite adrenaline junkie and quite a party monster too. And with surfing, the thrill, moment to moment, every wave was so exhilarating. I mean, it's the most incredible rush. And then you have the work to do to paddle back out. It's not easy. Sometimes it takes 20 or 30 minutes when you're surfing big waves. And not to mention the first time from the beach getting out there. I mean, I've had times it was an hour and a half of just nonstop paddling with everything you got and strategically going.
Before you hit a wave.
Before you even get out there to sit on the board and wait for the wave.
Yeah.
Which could be another half hour for the right one. And picking and choosing. All this is so much applied to what I do with the stone carving now. The picking and choosing of the stone, the work it takes to get to the point of completion, which is the thrill and the ride. When the piece gets mounted on the base or stood up, and it's like, this is why I do this. And everything before that really, I mean, aside from the ability to have the vision to see what it's going to be, and that's the motivation. It's all about the finish, and that's that God is in the details. And
yeah, I like the surfing metaphor. There's a lot of work that goes into just catching that first wave, just like you said.
Yeah, totally. So that's the thing. It's just a longer, more drawn out process. And I tell young artists that all the time. Don't be so focused on the money. Just find the bliss and get the work out there, because it's really not about the work, it's about the relationships and finding the people who believe in you and want to see what you make next, so they buy the piece that you just made, so you have the money to go on to the next one. And sharing the love.
Is there any other advice you'd give to young makers like that?
Something I learned from Paul Klein, who had a online seminar called Klein Artist Works. He said to make your work easily identifiable and easily describable. And with that, the meaning, like, find the common denominator in your work. Look at everything you've made so far and pick the points that mean the most and connect the dots and go with that and constantly be evolving and, stay on a trajectory. Don't jump all over the place until you find, or do that until you find that commonality between all the pieces.
Yeah, you got to stay in a groove for a while to see if it kind of works out for you, right?
Yeah, and people need to be able to know who made it without looking at the signature, if you ask me. I don't sign my work because it's pretty obvious to most people that I made them when they're done. You can go back 15 years on my other Instagram, which there's a link on my Rockstar one to my personal one, and that started in 2010, I believe. And again, there's a commonality. I did a lot of water features through the past 20 or 30 years. That's the closest thing to fine art I could really get paid well to do for the beginning of my career.
More of a technical question.
Yeah.
Can you describe a little bit of your process? Maybe some of the tools you use, or
Yeah, I have my work area out here if you want to come check it out. Of course, with the fresh air and the dust and the noise, it works better being outdoors.
Oh yeah.
So everywhere I go, I build the same style workstation. The sandbag for holding the piece in place, drop the piece in there, create the dent to cradle it. And the first thing I do is the roughing out. And a lot of times, I don't have my hand chisels here, but this is the power chisel, and it's driven by air. And I hold this like a pencil, and then the chisel gets hooked. I hook my pinky under it for better control, because otherwise it slips out. You can see the difference in my pinkies after 30 years of doing this. Forgive And I just push away. That most of the pushing goes with the chisel hand, and the hammer, you keep it on there, but it's a matter of pressing against the chisel just enough, and with both hands. And a lot of times especially with this rondelle chisel and doing that texture, it's almost like a punching that I do. As you know, martial arts have always been a love of mine, and so it's a kind of a matter of my own personal kung fu with the movements of keeping my knees bent, keeping the proper posture so I can endure.
Man versus stone.
Yeah,
huh?
and really working smart and keeping the posture right, and putting what they call in kung fu, putting the jin into it, the force. And a lot of it is just pecking away and getting ready, and you come into a big chunk, and that's when you really give it the hard push and make the piece pop off. And these are all really just shortcuts. You're looking at my air compressor. This pump is 75 years old, and I built this from various other air compressors. This is my road dog, and I can go out into the middle of the desert or on top of a mountain, and it fires up every time. It's not too loud, you know?
Yeah.
Plugs away, and when I need lots of air, I just crank it up. But for the most part, I even run it about that speed. And Old Faithful. With it being so old, there's not a single part in there that I couldn't have remade in the average machine shop.
Sure,
So
yeah.
I'll keep this thing forever. It's a Quincy, and they're known to be the best air compressor ever made.
And you can travel with that. Is this your van right here?
Yeah, I break
Wow.
it down and stow it there, and then I've got
Yeah.
bags of tools for everything that I need. Mechanical issues are a huge part of my job, and you know, as being old, it requires regular maintenance, and being a mechanic is a huge part of how I make art, with apparatuses and devices. So back to the whole process of the cutting. The chiseling is the first thing I do, and then I go into it with this, which is an air-powered saw. It's a 3 horsepower grinder. And the beautiful thing about the air tools is that there's not a direct connection between the motor and the blade, so there's not a lot of inertia. So if the blade binds up, it doesn't really kick so hard, it just bogs down. And I mean, if more people knew about it, they'd probably enjoy the process a lot more. So I do the chiseling first and then the cutting, so the edges don't get destroyed. If you try to chisel at the edge of a cut facet, it's so delicate.
It'll break apart.
Yeah, and it's a better look anyway when the cutting happens next. And then it's the polisher, and it's a 7-step process. These are Velcro pads. This is the finest, and 3,000 grit. It's indistinguishable that it's even abrasive.
Wow, yeah.
And then this is the very first step. That's a 60 grit, and you can really feel the diamonds in that one.
Yeah, a lot more rough.
Yeah. So 7 steps later, I got a shiny stone.
Tell me about your love for Mountain Valley water.
Yeah, I always liked this flavor, this brand. I have tremendous intuition again, and on my journeys, I came across Hot Springs, Arkansas, and it's got these fantastic old spa-type bathhouses from the 20s, I presume. And ever since then, it's been my brand. And it's important to stay hydrated here in the desert, especially. So
I have a friend in Austin, Texas, that is equally obsessed with,
I swear
with that water.
it helps my health. This brand in particular resonates with me, and I don't question it. You know, that first voice is the one to listen to. Yeah, I have the first voice and the second one that tries to cancel out the first.
Don't we all, right?
That's the one that makes bad things happen, and I've learned to ignore that second voice and have faith in my intuition and my spirit.
Very cool, man. Thanks for showing us your shop and showing us your
thanks
work
for
and
the interest.
telling me your story and talking about God and all the awesome things. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, if I weren't doing this, I'd be a preacher. I actually had considered that. There's a place called the Chaplaincy Institute of Maine, and in 2019 I almost signed up for the 2-year program, and with that I had this vision of becoming the hermit at hermitages all over the world, and I would carve stone in the meantime, and anybody that came along seeking knowledge or spirituality would come about, and in the meantime I would just keep enjoying my process. And yeah.
Hey, maybe there's a
Thankfully, my art career has fallen into place. Things started selling, and who knows? I might still do it just for the fun of it. But
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There might be another path that opens up for that later on.
yeah, the lockdown forced me to stay put in California. So this is my first time out in 4 years. On my way home to New York this summer, and I'll be going back to California as soon as the weather starts getting cold. Actually, I promised Chris that I'd be back here to help facilitate the creation of this artist residency.
Yeah, right.
It's going to be awesome.
So you follow the seasons, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks so much, and check out Rockstar Stone Man,
Yeah.
and check out some of his work. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, same here. I'm glad we got to do this, and look forward to the next time.
Yeah, likewise, man.
All right.
Marfa, Texas. You heard it here first.